Sound speeds, and welcome back to Speed Bumps. It is a new day, it is a new week, and this is episode number 30. We only have a few more episodes left in this year, don't we? Well, I tell you what, it's exciting. It's an exciting time, isn't it? Why? I don't know, man. It's just exciting to be alive. We're starting to get into cooler temperatures as we approach fall. And in some places of the country, it might even be snowing on you right now as of the time of this recording and video. So, I mean, as I'm recording this right now, it is actually scorching hot because it's mid-spring. So I'm kind of trying to anticipate what it's going to be like in the future. How did I do? Anyway, let's waste no more time and get right into our content. I did a short video at one point talking about boom poles and how they are conductive. Carbon fiber is conductive, and if you hit something that is electrified, you will electrify yourself. So you have to be very careful whenever you are using anything like a boom pole or any kind of conductive material at all towards high tension power lines or anything like that. I did a quick little short video, and in that video I talked about how a boom pole is a lightning rod, and that is absolutely true. As a matter of fact, while I was underneath the power lines that I shot the video at, I was feeling quite a little bit of energy bounce around inside of my fingers, even though I was using a panoramic boom pole, and it's got nylon wraps around the outermost section. I tell you, I was feeling a little bit of energy going through my fingers, and it was one of those things where I kept imagining a spark jumping off, but I knew it wasn't going to happen because they were like 40 feet above me. And I say I know it wasn't going to happen, but I tell you, I don't trust much anymore and leave much to fate, because years ago I was on a show called Necessary Roughness, and actually, no, I take that back. It was Halt and Catch Fire. And I had just unplugged the duplex cable that was running to the boom box I was wearing on my side and dropped it. And I was getting gloves out while asking the camera operator, are you going to see my cable if I route it through this direction? And wouldn't you know it, at that moment we hear a loud boom. And we kind of paused and look around at each other because it didn't sound like a healthy boom. Then we hear another big loud boom, and the first AD and the second AD come running in saying, everyone out of the house, everyone out, everyone out of the house. Stop what you're doing, get out of the house. We were wondering what was going on. Ended up being the rigging gaffer ran a condor into the Georgia power line. And it was sparking and doing all kinds of very bad things for a good part of an hour and a half, until Georgia Power got by there and killed the power line. So don't ever underestimate the power of power. Any kind of electricity you avoid. Which brings me to my point here that I wanted to make regarding lightning. A boom pole is a lightning rod, as we talked about. You do not, even if there is something much higher than you, like high tension power lines or something like that, you still don't want to have a boom pole in your hand if lightning is within, I would say, 4 feet. I'm sorry, 4 feet. Absolutely. If lightning is within 4 feet, don't use a boom pole. Good advice, Alan. But if you are within 4 miles, well, first of all, you should be indoors at that point anyway. The gaffer should have already informed the first AD that it is not safe for the crew to be outside. So at that point, you should definitely be inside. But if you happen to be working on something like an indie or a non-union show and they're not abiding by any particular rule, what I would say as a boom operator is you make yourself a policy. My policy is the boom pole under no circumstances goes over my head or is in my hand if lightning is within 4 miles. I absolutely will not do it. I don't care what the sound mixer says. I don't care if they threaten whatever. It is a safety concern. And if a sound mixer demands you do it, you can very easily pull the safety card. You're going to ask me to do something unsafe? Step in when we have lightning in an unsafe distance away from us. You're telling me to hold something that's basically a lightning rod? That is unsafe, and at that point, it could be something that the sound mixer could get in trouble for if they demand that you do that. So definitely stick to your guns. Do not hold a boom pole over your head. Lightning is not something you want to mess with. It can carry with it 1.21 gigawatts, and it can send Marty and Doc Brown back to the future, so you don't want to mess with it because you are happy in this world the way you are. For our second topic, I thought I would discuss background actors and things they can do to be better background actors from a sound perspective. Quite simply put, you do not need to make noise. Some people will say, you're just a meat puppet. Well, I don't usually refer to that language because it's kind of derogatory, let the truth be known. But the fact of the matter is, you are there for your look. If you are doing a beach sequence, you could be wearing a bathing suit and just hanging out on the beach. If you're as part of, if your background in a nudist colony, you're going to be wearing absolutely nothing, and that's what your job is, to be eye candy on set. If you are just walking around an office building, you are going to be wearing a suit and tie or a business suit, slacks, whatever, and you're going to be walking around as a business person. If you're walking around inside of a government building, you're going to be a government worker of some sort, and that's what you're going to be dressed as appropriately. If you're working in a bus stop, you're going to be dressed as anybody going someplace, or maybe a bus driver or something like that. In an airport, maybe dressed as a stewardess or a pilot. You know, it could be people waiting to board a plane. Whatever the case may be, you want to be the best background person you possibly can, right? And that means doing things very quietly. If you're in a restaurant, for example, and you're asked to eat food and, you know, pretend to eat, you know, whatever, take the silverware, put it down, and maybe pretend to eat with your hands. Take a piece of bread, pretend to take chunks out of it and eat that. That's going to be a nice quiet activity. You're not going to get anybody from the sound department on you if you do that. Absolutely under no circumstances do you whisper or make any noise. So you may be somebody who is supposed to be in the background and talking up a storm or something like that. In a heated conversation, you pantomime, which is a longer word for mime, and therefore that means you do not talk. So if you're talking to someone and you're trying to chew them out in the background for some reason, they say, you're going to act angry, you go, you still want to mouth certain words. You don't just want to go, whoa, 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 whoa. That looks very, very dumb, weird. So say something in your mind. You know, that kind of thing. And you're going to be just fine. The thing also is that you got to remember sometimes your outfit, your costume, your wardrobe will have some sort of noise elements to it. If you're a police officer, for example, you may have keys that are jingling around, and if you listen to your wardrobe and you say, I'm hearing a little bit of jingle, you might want to ask the prop person that puts the belt on you if they can do anything about those noises, because if you treat that in advance, you are going to be our best friend, and we will love you for that. The biggest question a lot of people ask is, are these footsteps an issue? If you have to ask, it probably is. If you're wearing sneakers or something like that, then you're probably okay. But if you're wearing high heels or something like that, be proactive and ask if you can get some sort of heel caps or padding for your feet. If not, they'll put down carpets. And this is if you're not on a carpeted floor, if you're something on like a hardwood floor, because that's when you're going to mainly hear it. Listen to your wardrobe. Listen to anything that you're carrying with you. If you're asked to push a little trolley around an office, you know, building, something like that, and the thing has squeaky wheels, ask if there's anything that they could do about the squeak. If it's rattling like crazy, say, is there anything we can do about this with this rattle? Or is there something else I could do that's not as noisy? I don't want to end up sabotaging sound. It at least shows that you are caring about that. Now, granted, the second AD may say, oh no, this is key to the scene, you got to do it. In which case, is there anything we can do about this sound? Make it quieter? I don't want to end up having the sound department come and talk to me. That is something that you have to be concerned of. Sound people may come over. I may come over and say, all right, why would you bring the, all right, here's a good example for you. Years ago, I was doing a TV show called Finding Carter. And in that sequence, we were inside of a school quite often. Well, in this one shot that we were doing, it was a bunch of kids in the background, and they were just talking out in front of their lockers. So kids were walking all over the background. This one background girl, for whatever reason, had clearance to wear her wooden shoes from Holland that she had just come back from Holland and bought. Wooden shoes. And so on the regular, like, linoleum concrete floor underneath that, clip clop, clip clop, clip clop, and we all stopped. The actors, the actresses, everybody, the crew, camera operator, everybody stopped and just watched as this person walked by until the person completely got out of sight. It was pretty funny, let the truth be known, because everyone stopped. If they didn't stop, I would have been pretty irritated. And truth be known, there was still a couple lines that did happen after they started hearing her footsteps, but only after they passed the actors did they start smirking and laughing and obviously breaking character, because it was ridiculous. There was another occurrence where we had actually been very proactive in patting people's shoes on Necessary Roughness in V3 on season 3. And there was this one girl that the foot foam on one of her shoes happened to flip its side, it over on the end, and it ended up having the adhesive grabbing the ground. So it was making this, kind of, adhesive type noise. So as John Stamos and Callie Thorne and everybody was standing there in this scene, they were all looking at each other. As she started to walk by, they all stopped and paused and looked at each other. And then all eyes went down and watched her as she walked away until she stopped. Then they turned back and looked at each other, and they kind of, smirked for a moment and then went back into the dialogue. So after that, I became friends with that girl. Her name was Steph. And I ended up telling her, I ended up referring to her anytime we were around people as the girl that turns heads. Because she quite literally did. And that's one of the things you also have to understand is on set, you're going to get a nickname for something. Might as well be something sound friendly. She was very sound friendly. She was always, total sweetheart, very willing to do whatever. And she would ask us, are my heels loud? Or the padding. She'd say the padding's starting to get a little skimpy or thin, or the pad just came off. Would you be able to put another one on? And we'd say, absolutely. Thank you for coming to us, bring it to our attention, because it was great. She was wonderful. But always, as a rule, you want to get into the habit of keeping in mind that you are there for visuals as a background person, but you're also there for sound. You have the ability to sabotage a scene if you are noisy, and you will get called out from a sound department person if you do that. If you're working in a kitchen, for example, and there's a bunch of people chopping stuff inside the kitchen with a knife, and they're chopping celery and carrots and all that kind of thing, but all you see is the top of the bar or whatever, and you can't see fully into the kitchen, but you see that there's a sous chef or a chef doing something behind there. Well, that person could be doing anything, and you don't need to hear it. It doesn't have to be cutting. It could be wiping down the counter with a quiet towel. And that would be just fine too, as long as you are doing some sort of an action and acting like you are actually doing something in the kitchen. That's what matters. Sound needs to hear nothing from you. Camera needs to see some sort of action. If you wear heels or something like that, we end up seeing your heels, ladies or gentlemen this day and age, then we will put something on the heels to quiet it down, usually with something like rubber or a very soft plastic. Some of the common things that you'll use is you can, if it's a thicker heel, for example, we'll get crutch tips, like what you would put on the end of a crutch, or cane tips, something that you would get put on the end of a cane that someone walks around, like a House MD style cane. If you have a more narrow heel, then we could end up using something like McMaster Carr sells rubber caps for different things and different types of different sizes of rubber stoppers and rubber different caps for different things. You could also go to a kite supply store, and they sell kite tips, which do not have any kind of a bell-shaped bottom to it. So if they say, well, your heels shouldn't look like they have bell bottoms on them. Well, if that's the case, then swap them out with kite tips, because those things will be a lot quieter than your actual heel is. Now, granted, it is going to have a little bit of extra sound to it that the rubber ones don't, but it's better to use soft plastic that breaks up the sound and takes the curse off of it than it is if you just use the regular heels. Now, when it comes to padding the shoes themselves, you can use hush heels or something like that, but those are strongly advised against, because foot foam is far better. If you can get a very nice thick foot foam, you want to put those to the bottom of shoes, cleaning off the bottom of the shoes before you apply. As a rule, what I will usually try to do is take a piece of 2-inch paper tape and put a base layer on the bottom of the shoe, because your foot foam will be clean and it will stick to that 2-inch paper tape far better than it will the bottom leather of a shoe. But the 2-inch paper tape will stick just fine to a shoe. Just make sure it doesn't overlap. You can also take pre-cut pieces of foot foam. If you're like, well, I like using the hush heels, which will squeak on some floors, by the way, but if you want to have them pre-cut, then that's fine. Get yourself a roll of 2-inch paper or 2-inch gaff tape and put pre-cut pieces around that. So that way you'll have a good 6 to 8 of them, and all you have to do whenever you need to run off to set to pad someone's shoes is you run to set, you tear off a little bit of that tape, you stick it right to the bottom, because you've already basically put it around the tape roll itself. Then you just tear it, put it on the bottom, tear it, put it on the bottom, and it's perfectly fine, because the tape will hold very well to the bottom of a shoe. much better than the foot foam will itself. If extras holding or background's coming in and they're going to lunch in another building and it's raining out, fully expect, and the same rule goes for actors as well. The same rule does apply, that you will want to be very aware that the foot foam that you put on someone's shoes will probably scratch off if it touches gravel outside. If they go outside at all, it will probably scratch off, and you'll end up having to replace them, or at least spot checking shoes. If they are wet coming back from another place, extras holding or catering, then you might end up having to put them on right before you roll, or at least check them at that point, because their shoes may be wet and not take to those things very kindly. And there's no real amount of tape, paper tape you could do to stick on them to make it hold well. You could try duct tape if you really want to, or carpet tape if you want to get extremely aggressive, but keep in mind that will tear the bottom off of many of these shoes if it holds any at all. So you don't really want to go there. That's extremely aggressive as an approach. If they are throwaway shoes and they say, I don't care, these are my shoes and I don't care, do whatever you need to make them quiet, then get aggressive if you need to and want to. If they're too wet, see what will work and what won't. But regardless, those are some things that you should be keeping in mind if you are a background actor, because anything that you do will be audible by the sound department. We will hear you and we will call you out on that, usually privately first, unless we do a blanket address to the second ADs and say, hey, can you just address the background people and tell them to be more quiet with their silverware? They don't need to make a noise. They don't need to, so just put them down. Eat something with your fingers, or pretend to eat something with your fingers. You're going to be a lot better off, and you will be much more close to being a friend of sound than you will ever imagined in the past. So there you have it, another episode of the Speed Bumps podcast in the can. That's right, you said it with me, didn't you? Well, if you've been watching this channel, you have. Episode 30 is now gone. We only have a few episodes left, if my calculations are correct. In the words of Dr. Emmett Brown and Back to the Future, there's only 4 left before we get to Christmas Day, and that would be the last episode of the year. So that's only a few episodes away. If you have been enjoying the Speed Bumps podcast, please let me know. In the comments below is a great place, because otherwise I will have no idea if you've just said, oh, nope, I'm going to skip these episodes. There's nothing valuable for me in here. Or if you've enjoyed listening to me talking about just giving stream of consciousness type sound advice and information that you would need to know on set, then by all means tell me that as well, because that could drive what I do in the future. We will see, though. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Speed Bumps, and I will see you in 2 weeks with another one.
If you'd like to ask a sound-related question to be answered in a future episode, send text, audio, or video to ssp@soundspeeds.us. Want to record this outro? Details in the description below. Find us on social media and online at www.soundspeeds.us. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more sound-related content.